Welcome, welcome. I'm really excited on these Q&As. The goal is, I see it so clearly that what I really wanted out of these Q&As is actually happening. And what I wanted is for the surface of the fitting issues to be resolved and for all of you to be getting it and start to delve deeper. Because it's where we really start to get great. It's easy. It's just not been presented to you before. And so with these questions and answers tonight, if you'll have a little bit of patience with me, I just hope you'll watch it over and over until you get these answers, because it's exciting. We're going deeper. It is into pattern making. I'm going to suggest you take the pattern making class. I didn't plan the questions to be right in front of when the pattern making class starts, but we need to know pattern making. And you're going to see that some of these answers are simply because you don't know pattern making. And so there's like a deep divide where we can't go because we don't know that arena. It's time to step into that arena and get to know those answers so that you'll be able to come full circle and do what you want to do in sewing. So it's very exciting to me. So let's get started. And again, be patient with the process here. She had sent this before, and I didn't get it because if you just respond to an email, it goes into a junk box. So she had responded to an email, it went to a junk box, and I did not get it. That's not the issue. I just wanted you all to know that. Okay, so she's making number 624, Coco's asymmetrical blouse. This first picture is to just show you what the blouse looks like. Now, keep in mind, this Coco, that was Coco Chanel. This was a Chanel. Armani did a blouse very similar to this. It's a very beautiful blouse. So features of this blouse are such that the shoulder is forward. It's a forward shoulder. Actually, it's not called a forward. It's called a dropped shoulder. So it just means that the shoulder is not at the shoulder seam. It's actually literally forward. So I want you to look at these few pictures that she sent, because these are the blouse that she made, the muslin that she made on her. If we look on the one on the left, beautiful. Look on the one in the middle, beautiful. Look on the one on the right, again, beautiful. Notice on the one on the right, and I know it's navy blue and it's hard to see it, but you can see that the shoulder seam is certainly in front of her shoulder, and that's where it should be. So let me just tell you facts about a shoulder seam. A shoulder seam is a dart. It's an angled straight line that comes together, joins the front and the back. There is no anatomical alignment between the body and the shoulder seam. The only reason we want it to be in a particular area is so that when the top of the sleeve comes into the body, it will pivot easily if that fullness of the cap of the sleeve is at the top of the shoulder. So where that shoulder seam is doesn't make any difference if it were sleeveless. However, when you go to put in a sleeve, we want the shoulder seam and the top of the sleeve to align for greater movement. If I take that sleeve away, it doesn't matter where the shoulder seam falls. As long as the rounded back is appropriate, as long as all of those other things are appropriate, but where the shoulder seam falls does not make a difference. In this case, because it is a forward shoulder, drop shoulder, whatever you want to call it, wherever it drops is fine also. If she wants to move it down or move it up, it will not make a difference. The sleeve, when it's put in, should still go at the very top, which has a notch on that shoulder seam. I'm hoping you understand and are following me this. If not, we'll do a subsequent follow-up to this. But everything that I see on here looks absolutely perfect. Okay, next question. She wants to make sure she's doing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. So I've got to read this just so that you clearly get this. She bought some jeans she likes. They are stretch woven material with one-way stretch going around the body. She wants to make the barrel leg pants. That's EF's pants. That's out of a woven. Can I use the measurement for the crotch length? That's from front to back. And to compare it to her barrel pants. Can she use a stretch woven length for a woven pattern? The answer is yes. The answer is yes, because the only thing that's relying on stretch is the circumference. It's going around. And what we know about the crotch is that's length. So yes, you can use one to compare to the other. Okay? Perfect. All right, this next issue now is a lady that I had in a yoga pant fitting class. And I want you to look at this picture, and I want you to see that where the pant is going in between her body is too short. Now it's causing other issues, but it's simply too short. She wants to pull them up even higher. That's not going to work. If it were a skirt, it would work, but because you've got a crotch on a pair of pants, you can't pull them up any higher. So the only way to do that, I've drawn this on, if you look at piece number 1 and piece number 2, is that red line, is to add to the top of both pants that will drop the crotch. That's called crotch depth. That is the crotch depth of the pant. And because a lot of times we can't see what the back looks like, we go by how it feels, it's good to take a picture, because you don't want to walk around with pants that look like that. Ignore everything else that's going on, because the pants are so short in the crotch depth that they'll create other issues. So add to the top. How much to add? I would start with 1.5 inches. That's ballpark, but leave enough to where you can, and don't add it to the yoke, to the waistband. Add it below the yoke band to the top of the pant. I would add, you know, enough to where you could maybe change it, like maybe add 2 inches, and then if that's too much, back it off. Rather than trying to add the exact amount, I would add too much, and then you could always pin it under the band to shorten it. But remember, this is a length adjustment. It's called crotch depth, but it's a length adjustment, so it's the same all the way around. All right, very good. Okay. This next question, again, I've just got to read it because I need you to understand the whole concepts. I just watched you on YouTube about draping the 1900 jacket. You took a side dart under the armhole and said that if you have a gapping armhole, that means you should have picked a larger bust cup size pattern piece. That's confusing to me, and maybe others, because I was always thinking I needed to pick a smaller bust size pattern piece. Could you explain and talk about that in your next Q&A? I understand it now after watching the video a few times, but I'm sure there are many others that probably thought you needed a da-da-da-da-da-da. She's been in the yoga class, she's made it up, they have perfect pants, so she trusts me that the concepts I'm teaching are right. She just can't get this principle through her head. And I'm a big believer that this is an example of not knowing pattern making. Okay, so I want you to look at this picture. And in this picture, we see there's a gap in the armhole. So I'm going to kind of take you through a little, you know, linear line here to see why the dart needs to be larger. What I do understand, or most of us understand, is when I have a gap in the armhole, and if you look at the picture next to it, the dart fixes that gap. A gap means there's too much fabric, and the dart is what takes it away. So you can see here in the picture there was a gap. The woman, whoever, put a dart there in the armhole, and she thinks the problem is fixed. Now, keep in mind, darts, when you make patterns in armholes, they shouldn't exist. You don't ever go buy a designer garment with a dart in the armhole. And that's because as pattern makers, we know that darts don't belong in the armhole. They only are there when someone doesn't know pattern making and doesn't know where else to put them. So now, because I have that dart in the armhole, I can pivot that dart somewhere else to where it's less visual. The goal of darts is to make them less visual, not to make them right in front where everyone can see and they're pointing right to my bust point. So I can pivot that now to a side dart, a bust dart. I can pivot it to a waist dart. I could pivot it to a princess seam. I have lots of options, but I would not leave it there. What I want you to see is the gap is solved by bringing together those two pieces. If the gap still existed, then I would make the dart larger, and when a dart is larger, that's a D cup over a C cup. The larger the dart, the larger the cup is called. Therefore, if I have a gap in the armhole, I need a larger dart. Hopefully that procession of explanation will help you. The next question is about deadstock. What is deadstock? I buy deadstock. I buy deadstock. Deadstock is a reference to designers that they have fabric that they are no longer wanting to use. They call it deadstock. They sell it off, whatever. Deadstock is limited. If you ever have availability of fabric that can be reorderable, that's not dead stock. Dead stock is limited. So be careful in the terminology. Now, some of the fabric we get, it's not called, I don't know what the terminology is, to be honest, and we need to be careful because sometimes people act authoritative as this is what this is. Factories have dead stock, but by definition, that is not dead stock. So if there's a mill in Italy and they sell all this fabric to Chanel, but they've still got, 50 yards that Chanel didn't want, then that's called dead stock. That's not called dead stock. I'm sorry, that's not called dead stock because it's not from a designer. Dead stock is typically from a designer, not from a mill. So I'm buying, we can call them mill ends, dead stock. I'm buying that which is available, not what I picked out at the factory. The reason being is simply cost. The costs are so prohibitively high. I could never get the fabrics I'm getting at the price I'm getting that if I went and paid for them. The designers are paying much more, 2-3 times what I'm paying, what you're paying. And so that is why that fabric exists. It's from mills that overmake and from designers that overbuy. The orders didn't come through like they thought. They have to liquidate that fabric. But the most important thing out of this, and the reason I want you to understand it, is it's limited. A little while ago, I was at a show and this one company was advertising that, oh, we'll swatch this for you and you can reorder and we can, have enough to take care of 600 stores. No. You can't have dead stock that takes care of 600 stores. There's no way designers have that much to sell off. There's no way designers would sell off that much. They wouldn't be so poorly financially funded that they would buy that much and not use it. Does that make sense? It's just, you've got to think about the designers. They are buying as little as they can because they are not being paid. It's economically for designers, it's a struggle. So they're buying very frugally and they're selling off, again, very frugally, very limited what they're selling off. And a lot of what they're selling off is not happening in the US right now, which is why I go to Italy. Okay, so just correction in terminology and wanting you to understand all that. If there's questions on these questions, let me know. If I need to clarify something, let me know. The whole reason for this is so that we can really take care of those little hanging fruits out there that just are causing you to not have a concrete answer to what you need to have. In order for us to be successful in sewing, we've got to feel like we know the answers and then move forward. So the goal is happy sewing, you guys. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to help. And I love your questions. You're just learning more and more and more, and it's just really exciting. Happy sewing from Silhouette Patterns.